I'm 26, and I think one of the hardest things to admit is that sometimes the person you choose feels different from your family at first, only because they hurt you in a new accent. That sounds harsher than I mean it to. At least it did the first time I thought it. But once the thought landed, it never really left. Because I spent most of my life dreaming about escape. Not luxury. Not some perfect cinematic reinvention. Just escape. A life where my time belonged to me. A life where I could breathe without feeling watched, judged, corrected, or absorbed into somebody else's needs. Then I finally met someone who felt exciting and different and alive. And somehow I still ended up in another relationship where I was apologizing for wanting space, clarity, and basic emotional reliability. That was the part that broke me. Not that life disappointed me. That I had run so hard from one kind of trap only to build another with my own hands. My girlfriend's name is Talia. She's 27. We were together for 7 months. That does not sound like a long time. I know. But some relationships do not need years to damage you. They just need enough access and the right pressure points. For context, I come from a family business. My mother started it with my father before I was born. A small business in a small town. The kind of place that quietly swallows whole families while everyone around them praises their work ethic. My childhood was built around shop hours, deliveries, stock, customer problems, holiday rushes, and the constant understanding that our family existed in service to keeping the machine alive. My father got sick during the pandemic. I left school for a while to help. Then he died. After that, there was no clean break. No movie scene where I packed a bag, cried on a bus, and started over somewhere beautiful and anonymous. There was just my mother, my brother, the shop, the bills, and this heavy unspoken expectation that now more than ever, family meant sacrifice. So I stayed, worked every day, weekends, holidays, no real time off, no salary in any meaningful sense. I lived at home, got what I needed, and was told I should be grateful because everything I had came from the family anyway, which is a very efficient way to make an adult feel both indebted and trapped. By the time I met Talia, I already hated my life in ways that felt embarrassing to say out loud. I hated the business. I hated how lonely my world had become. I hated how little money I actually had access to despite working constantly. I hated that my mother could still talk to me like I was a child one second and a labor unit the next. I hated how every plan I had for myself seemed to get postponed by one more emergency, one more family guilt spiral. One more practical reason I couldn't leave yet. And because life apparently enjoys layering irony onto suffering, I also had all the usual private mess on top of it. Anxiety, possible depression, an eating disorder history. Weight issues I have been reminded of by relatives often enough that their comments now live in my bones rent-free. The kind of self-esteem damage that makes even obvious unhappiness feel like something you maybe deserve. Then Talia showed up. She was bright, funny, direct. The kind of person who moved through the world as if she fully expected to belong in it. That quality alone was intoxicating to me. She worked in event promotions and hospitality, always knew where people were going, which bar had the best music, what concert tickets were worth buying early, who was being dramatic, which cousin was secretly getting divorced, why some friend group had split into factions. She was all momentum. All commentary, all spark. In the beginning, I mistook her energy for presence. That was my first mistake. Our first dates were fun, but there were signs even then. She was always on her phone, constantly. She could be sitting across from me while I was trying to tell her something personal and still somehow end up answering 2 texts, reacting to 3 stories, and forwarding me a meme before I finished the sentence. The weird part was that she would still insist she was paying attention. Then later, when I brought up feeling ignored, she would act hurt and say things like, "So the honeymoon phase is over already?" Or, "I'm sorry I'm not performing enough excitement for you." She had this way of turning small feedback into proof that I was secretly dissatisfied with her as a whole person. It was so disproportionate that I would always end up comforting her, which in hindsight is impressive. I could say, "Please be a little more present with me." And somehow, 10 minutes later, I was reassuring her that I still liked her and that I was not planning to leave. That should have told me everything. But when you are lonely enough, emotional confusion can still feel better than silence. And I was lonely. Desperately. Not in the romanticized way. Not the soft focus kind. I mean, I was spending almost every day working with family, then going home with family, then trying to study or decompress in a house that never felt fully mine. All while watching people my age slowly build actual adult lives, apartments, careers, trips, savings, friend groups, the luxury of private bad decisions. So, yes, when someone vibrant wanted me, I wanted very badly for that to mean something healing. The first major crack happened at a family birthday. It was my first time meeting most of Talia's relatives. Some of them had only just learned she was dating a woman. A few were openly weird about it. Not dramatic enough for a speech, just enough to make every interaction feel like a test I had not studied for. Before the event, I told her I was nervous. I told her big groups make me shut down a little at first. I told her I would need her near me until I warmed up. She said she understood. Then we got there, and she basically vanished. For the first half of the party, she was helping. Handling decorations, running food around, chatting with relatives, disappearing into family logistics, leaving me stranded among near strangers who were already trying to figure out whether I was shy, rude, or temporary. I did my best. Smiled, nodded, answered questions, stood there with a drink I barely touched while her uncle asked what I actually do all day. And her aunt kept emphasizing how close Talia used to be with some ex-boyfriend from years ago. At one point, I found Talia in the kitchen and quietly said I felt a little abandoned. She looked irritated and said, "You're coming off standoffish. You should mix more." That sentence did something ugly to me, because I had told her beforehand exactly what I was afraid of. And instead of helping, she had turned my fear into a personality flaw. We fought about it in the car afterward. She said I had embarrassed her by being too quiet. I said she left me alone with people who were half curious and half hostile. She said she had responsibilities. I said I was not asking her to stand glued to my hip, just to remember I was there too. Then she said the line I should have taken much more seriously. "I can't always babysit your feelings." Babysit my feelings. That is a phrase people use when they want all the relational credit of being caring without accepting any of the actual labor of care. After that, I started seeing the pattern everywhere. If she made a mistake, it became funny. If I made a mistake, it became character evidence. She once entered the wrong destination in a rideshare app and laughed for 10 minutes about how we all make mistakes. Another time, I forgot my ID before we were supposed to go clubbing, and she rode home in silence like I had ruined a state visit. She would rewrite stories while I was still standing inside them. If she had been busy and I adjusted my own plans accordingly, later she would insist I should have known she still wanted to be invited. If I reminded her of what she had literally said, she would shrug and go, "That's not how I remember it." At first, I thought that was just normal couple friction. Then I realized it was becoming one of the central facts of the relationship. Her version of events had gravity, and mine had to fight for oxygen. At home, things were no better. The family business got worse. My mother's temper got sharper. My brother, naturally, had more freedom and fewer expectations because apparently a son's future remains a future, while a daughter's is something you can continue borrowing from indefinitely. I was trying to study, trying to find internships, trying to hold together some version of a plan for escape, and every day that passed made me feel older, poorer, and more humiliated. I started telling Talia more about it, about how hopeless I felt, how trapped, how much I hated working without pay while still being expected to act grateful, how I feared waking up at 30 and realizing I had never really lived at all. Sometimes she was kind about it. That was what made this hard. She could hold me, listen, say beautiful things about how I deserved better and was too smart for the life I was stuck in. But then, just as often, she would make everything about how my stress was affecting her. If I was distracted, she would say I was pulling away. If I wanted one quiet night, she would ask whether I was over us. If I didn't respond fast enough, she would shut down and act cold until I chased the conversation back to life. It got to the point where my already exhausted brain started treating every interaction like a high-stakes exam. Be open enough, but not too heavy. Be affectionate enough, but not too needy. Be honest, but not in a way that requires anything. Have emotions, but not ones that inconvenience her mood. The worst fight started over a movie. That sounds ridiculous. It probably is. I had one day off from classes and shop duties lining up in a way that almost never happened. A friend said she might come see a film with me. Then she backed out. So I messaged Talia and told her I was thinking of going alone because I really needed a few hours where no one needed anything from me. She exploded. Not instantly, but with that precise theatrical hurt she specialized in. She said if I knew she was free, I should have asked her first. I said I thought she was busy because she had told me she was going to the library for work onboarding. She said she would have dropped that for me if I had mattered enough to ask. I said I literally had asked once I knew my friend wasn't coming. She said she felt like sloppy seconds. Then later, when I tried to revisit it calmly, she flat out rewrote the sequence and said that was not how it happened. Something about that broke open all the hidden resentment at once. Because I was already giving my family my labor, my time, my money, my future. And now I was apparently supposed to give my partner preemptive mind reading too. I told her I was tired of feeling like every conversation ended with me apologizing for reality not matching her preferred version of it. She went quiet. That kind of quiet that is not peace, just a weapon with better posture. Then she said, "You always make me the villain when I just want basic consideration." And I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my body had clearly run out of more dignified reactions. I said, "Basic consideration? You leave me alone with your family, ignore me when I tell you what I need, rewrite conversations, and then somehow I'm always the one who has to fix your feelings after." She started crying immediately. Of course she did. And again, because I am apparently a slow learner, I still spent half the argument trying not to sound too harsh, trying to state real pain in a tone soft enough that she would not turn the entire conflict into my delivery. That is exhausting in a way I cannot overstate. The real breaking point came 3 weeks later. I had had a brutal day at the shop. My mother said something nasty about my weight in front of a customer and then acted like I was too sensitive for reacting. My brother disappeared for half the afternoon while I covered for him. I got home, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried so hard I had to sit on the floor. Later that night, Talia called. I told her I had no energy. I said I just wanted her to be soft with me for once. No analysis. No debate. No but from my side. Just soft. She was soft for about 30 seconds. Then she somehow turned the conversation into how stressed she was by feeling like she always had to be the stable one in our relationship. I remember going completely cold because I was speaking to her from a bathroom floor after a day in which my family had wrung me out like a rag, and she still found a way to reposition herself as the one carrying the burden. I said, "You are not my safe place anymore." The line went silent. Then she said very quietly, "That's really cruel." And maybe it was. But it was also the first fully honest thing I had said in months. Update 1. We did not break up that night. I almost wish we had. Instead, we entered that weird limbo where the relationship is clearly dying, but both people keep trying to negotiate with the corpse. She promised to work on things. Said she would be more present. Said she did not realize how unsupported I felt. Said she loved me and did not want to lose me over misunderstandings. The problem was that by then, nothing felt like a misunderstanding anymore. It felt like a pattern, a structure. A whole relationship built around me accommodating her emotional gravity while quietly starving in orbit. Update 2. We officially ended it 10 days ago. The final conversation was almost calm, which somehow made it sadder. She said she felt like I was giving up on us too early. I said it had not been early for me. It had just been invisible for too long. She said she loved me. I said I know. And the worst part is, I think she did. But love without emotional safety starts to feel like another demand. Like another thing you are supposed to honor while your own needs get reframed as flaws, burdens, or timing problems. I told her I needed a life where I was not always negotiating for basic steadiness. She cried. I cried. Then she said maybe one day I would realize no relationship is perfect. And I told her perfect had never been the standard. Reliable was. Update 3. I am still at the shop. Still trying to figure out how to leave. Still poor. Still overwhelmed. Still not magically transformed. But something has changed. For the first time in years, my dread belongs to one system instead of two. That sounds like such a low bar. Maybe it is. But when your life has been one long lesson in accommodating other people's needs, Reducing the number of people with emotional access to you feels less like failure and more like oxygen. And I think the sentence I'm keeping from all of this is this: I did not need someone to rescue me. I needed someone who wouldn't make escape feel lonelier than the trap. She couldn't do that. Maybe she loved me in the only way she knew how. Maybe I stayed too long because I was used to confusing intensity with connection. Maybe both are true. All I know is that the moment I stopped begging to be met halfway, I finally understood how far I had been walking alone.